Good evening. This evening session is a slide presentation about theosophical centers around the world. I'm grateful to those who have sent photographs from the different centers. And when you see this presentation, you can realize how the idea of a theosophical center has flourished in many countries, and many of these centers are quite old. From the chronological point of view, but each one of them in their own way has an element of newness to them. A former General Secretary of the English section, Mr. C.R. Groves, once wrote something about Adyar which I think applies to every theosophical center in some measure, in the sense that it conveys the essential keynote of a theosophical center, and perhaps the essential attitude of all of us who attend meetings at that center or who work for that center. I don't remember the exact words. The words are in his book about Adyar by C.R. Groves. He said, "At Adyar, unlike many other places, one can become aware that the source of reality is everywhere except in the personal self." The source of reality is everywhere except in the personal self. As we have seen during this Congress, during the presentations, one of the greatest obstacles to universal brotherhood is precisely this notion, perhaps this narcissistic notion that we are important, that we think what we think is important, what we want is important, but perhaps this notion is essentially unreal. And a real theosophical center helps us to become aware that this notion is unreal. Because we are in Europe, we will begin with the International Theosophical Center at Naarden. I understand that this is a building called Ashrama, where the local lodge meets. This is a path in Naarden. This is the Besant Hall, where the main meetings take place, meetings and seminars as well. Seminars and meetings there are sometimes organized by the European Federation and sometimes organized by the Dutch section of the Theosophical Society. This is a Buddha statue in the gardens of St. Michael's House in Naarden. The Naarden Center, the property was donated to Dr. Annie Besant by Mrs. Van Hagen Bosewijs, I don't know how to pronounce her name, in 1925 for the work of the great hierarchy of adepts. And Dr. Besant gratefully accepted. The first head of the center was Bishop James Wedgwood. He was succeeded by Dr. George Arundale, and then Mrs. Rukmini Devi Arundale. And in 1988, in July, the center was formally made a part of the larger Theosophical Society when Mrs. Radha Bernier, International President, became the president of the center. This is Dr. Besant planting a tree at Naarden in 1927. It is very interesting. You will see her presence in different centers. And it's a very uplifting history to have a person like her associated with a number of centers. Winter at Naarden. The new dining hall. There was a campaign, there was a financial campaign in order to obtain funds for this hall. The dining hall from a different perspective. The Naarden Center is blessed with many trees. These are the only free boarding and lodging residents at Naarden. They do attend meetings in their own time. And some of them may have reached a greater stage of rabbit evolution. This is Mrs. Radha Bernier laying the foundation stone for the new guest house at Naarden, summer 1995. You can see Mr. Rob van Vloten in the background, a longtime resident of the center. This is a lunch outside St. Michael's House, and in the middle you see Mr. Kurt Berry, a former chairman of the European Federation, a former international treasurer of the TS, and a very devoted worker of the society who passed away earlier this year. The person with her back to us is Miss Han Raven. A view of St. Michael's House, and an aerial view of St. Michael's House. From Naarden, we go north to the land of the Kalevala, Kreivila in Finland. This is one of the buildings. For some mysterious reasons, my notes have disappeared. So if Maria Artama is here, is Maria here? Maria is not here. I think, is this a dining hall in Kreivila? Huh? It's a meeting hall. Lecture hall. Thank you. This is the main house. This is a kind of a dining room in the main house. A sitting room. This is a building by the lake, I understand. It's the sauna. Sauna. This is where we learn theosophy at high temperatures. This is a meeting at Kreivila with the international president and members from the Nordic countries. I see Mr. Perty Spets there. Is Perty here? No. This is the lecture hall at Kreivila. I do see Mr. Duzanzagar and Ms. Mrs. Blanca, are they here? No, they are. This is a meeting of the Council of the European Federation in 2008. The lady kneeling on the grass is Mrs. Patricia Calvi. And to her right is Elizabeth Smith. And there are many others there, of course. I also see Brother Antonio Girardi at the back. I also see Monica Ostilius. Is Monica here? No. I knew it was not going to be a popular presentation. This is another view of the main house at Creville. In an email to me, Maria Artama, who is the General Secretary, mentioned that Mr. Sri Ram, when he inaugurated the center in 1955, he expressed a hope that it would be a center in which wisdom would unfold, and therefore it is a center dedicated to wisdom. Now we move to the United States, Olcott headquarters. This is the entrance of Olcott headquarters. You see, on the pillars, there are on each there is a bronze plaque. In one of them, it is said, Olcott National Headquarters, the Theosophical Society in America, organized as a national society in 1886. This headquarters established under the presidency of L.W. Rogers in 1926. And then it says, all life is one, and even the humblest forms enshrine divinity. Dr. Annie Besant, laying the foundation stone of Olcott headquarters in 1926 in a Masonic ceremony. The person next to her is Mr. A.P. Warrington. I told you that she would reappear. This is Mr. L.W. Rogers with a group of TS members in Casper, Wyoming, in the early 20s. This is the lecture hall of the Olcott headquarters. You will see on the dais Mrs. Betty Bland, Dr. Robert Elwood, and the person next to us, I think, may be Maria Parisian, but I'm not sure. Steve Schweitzer is saying that I may be right. This is another view of the hall. The Olcott Library. This is the foyer of the Olcott Center, the entrance. This is the bookshop and Quest Books in winter. The outdoors view, the indoors view. This is a staff group photograph from 2009. Of the 4 people sitting down on the front row, 4 are participating in this Congress, namely Tim Boyd, Betty Bland, and David Bland. The 4th person, and I need Steve's help here, I think it may be Mr. Floyd Kettering. Rewind, sorry. This is the staff photo of 2009. Rewind to 1954. James Perkins, Carolyn Tess, Geoffrey Hodgson, Richard Brooks, Norman Pearson, author of the book The Time, Space, and Self, and Miss Joy Mills. And then from 1954 to 1955, Mr. Sriram, in one of his visits at Alcott, James Perkins, Joy Mills, among other workers there. The Crotona Institute of Theosophy in California. The Crotona Institute was established in 1924. It is a center of the esoteric school, but it also carries educational programs to the Crotona School of Theosophy, which are open to the public. This is the front view of the Crotona Library. But if you rewind to 1924, this is the Crotona Library, as it was then. The Crotona Library. The librarian is Mrs. Lakshmi Narayanan. This is the fountain behind the library. The pond. The Crotona School of Theosophy. These are students' units. This is a typical Crotona residence. You can see the Spanish style of architecture there. This house may have been inhabited by Diana Dunnigan, but she's not here, I'm sure. Was this the house you lived in? Thank you. At least some people have come. This is one of the views from the hill. Another view from the hill. Crotona, Ojai, is a city. The name Ojai is Native American and it means nest. And it is believed that in this small town or place surrounded by hills, many different tribes would come in peace and brotherhood. Mrs. Dora Coons, in one of her visits to Crotona in 1983, said that there was a strong angelic presence on the hills, and which added to the special atmosphere of the whole place. This is also the place in which J. Krishnamurti had very important transformative experiences in 1922 that would give him a sense of reorientation in his life. And it's also the city in which he died in February 1986. This is the pink moment, sunset in Ojai. Are you bored? I'm just checking. From the US we go to Brazil. Is there any Brazilian? Are there any Brazilians here? Is Mr. Ulysses Rezende here? Thank you. I'm glad you have come. The Brazilian Institute owes a lot to the vision, generosity of Ulysses. And in 1993, when we had the World Congress in Brasilia, we had some meetings at the Institute with many, many delegates. And I remember that Mercedes Robusta was there. Is Mercedes here? No. I should stop embarrassing people, but... All right, let's go to see the Institute. It was originally called the farm because the land was basically two adjoining farms, very sizable farms with many waterfalls, trees, hills, and the property was acquired and then registered in the name of the Theosophical Society, and many gatherings have been taking place there. This is the mandala, the main lecture hall, meeting place. This is another view of the mandala. You see, it has a very large, modern octagonal veranda, and with beautiful views into the valleys and so on. This is one of the accommodation units. So, surrounding the mandala, there are two accommodation units, on the right and on the left. This is the one on the right, as you enter the building. Another view of the garden near the mandala. You see in the distance a very small temple, and it's called the temple. But it's not dedicated to any particular religion, it's just a temple. And I understand that it was built following certain Greek proportions. Is that correct, Ulysses? Greek. And members meet there for meditation and silence, and also to watch the sunset. One of the waterfalls, another one, this is the temple, and people sitting outside to watch the sunset. Another view of the temple. This is the kind of image that probably Steven Spielberg would be interested in if he wanted to do an immediate context of the third degree, number 2. This is sunset at the Institute. And this is the meeting that was held last year in July, the first Portuguese and Spanish meeting. How many of you were there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Some people were there. Actually, on that occasion, there were more than 220 people. Well, we have to move on to Argentina. Are there any Argentinians here? Okay. Centro de San Rafael. This is an aerial photograph of the center. You see the construction there. This is unfinished. The final completion included 5 wings in the form of a star. The lady on the left, Maria Rosa Garcia, is one of the pillars of the center, like with a number of other workers as well. This is an illustrious resident of the center. Free from self-importance. The next slide I have called the beginnings of theosophical inquiry. What is a hose? Can it be known without being bitten? And the other dog says, no, it has to be observed. These are the 2 Upanishadic Argentinian dogs. Another view of the center. This is a group of members at a meeting there. Maria Rosa appears here, as well as a number of other members. Is this Ernesto Garcia? I suppose so. Illustrious visitors to the center, Miss Iante Hoskins. How many of you met or know of Iante Hoskins? A number of you, right. She visits San Rafael. Mrs. Sidney LaCanta also visited. Here he is shown with Mrs. Dolores Gago. That was part of Sidney LaCanta's lecture tour through South America, probably in 1984. Dr. John Algio also visited the center. Young people who are also associated with the center. This probably was not taken at the center, but we have included them. Pablo Sender in one of the presentations at the center. Oh. Well, we leave Argentina and we cross the polar region to go to Australia and to visit the Manor Center in Sydney. This building was purchased in 1922 by a group of theosophists, including Gustav Kollerstron, John Mackay, and others. And the inspiration behind the center was C.W. Leadbeater. Rewind more or less 80 years, and this is how the manor looked in 1922. It has a beautiful view of the harbor, as you shall see. Another view of the manor from the street. This house was known at this time as the Bakewell Folly, because Mr. Bakewell, who was very wealthy, he had this notion of building a huge mansion for his whole family to live together. It didn't work. So he put the house for sale, and a group of theosophists bought it. An illustrious visitor to the center in 2001, Venerable Professor Samdong Rinpoche, the Prime Minister of the Tibetan government in exile. Diana, at least at the manor we treat Tibetans well. And that gives me an opportunity to tell you a very short story, if you are not bored. Samdong Rinpoche was with us for the World Congress, and a Vietnamese resident at the manor came to me rather anxiously to say that he needed to take Samdong Rinpoche to the Indian consulate because he needed to renew his permit. And he said to me, "I drive, you talk." I said, "Well, that's a good bargain." I said, "But Duke, we need to leave early because of the traffic." He said, "Yes, we'll leave at 8 o'clock. We were in the University of New South Wales in Randwick in Sydney. We ended up arriving at the Indian consulate at shortly after 9, but the consulate would open only at 10, so I had 1 hour with the Rinpoche. So we had quite a number of conversations and so on. And I asked him, "Why don't you have a passport? Are you not an Indian citizen?" He said, "No, we are not Indian citizens. the Indian government issues an identity card which has to be renewed periodically. I said, but what is your nationality? He said, stateless. I'm considered as a stateless individual. So we went, when the consulate opened, Duke, myself, and Sangdong Rinpoche went to the consulate, and the official asked for the payment of a certain fee, and Sangdong Rinpoche was prepared to pay it, and Duke didn't allow him to pay. He wanted to pay, and then Duke looked at me and he said, "Good karma, good karma." So Sangdong Rinpoche said, please be sure that you check the kind of renewal they have given me, because I need to travel to other countries as well. So the next day, I went to collect his passport, his identity card. And of course, because I had to check, I ended up looking at the identification pages. Professor Rinpoche is a renowned academician, a professor of philosophy and Tibetology and so on, a scholar in his own right. And the identification page showed the place he was born in Tibet, the name of his parents, and then it says occupation. He wrote service. And further down it said profession, and he wrote service. It was very difficult to go back to the university after that. This is the hallway at the manor. Another view of the manor from the garden. Another view of the manor from the garden. This is the view of the harbor from the manor, Sydney Harbor. Those who live in Australia are familiar with the myth created by a certain journalist that Krishnamurti would walk through the heads of Sydney and into the city. That means he would walk on the water because they said he was the Christ. Then in 1971, Krishnamurti gave an interview to the ABC radio, and the journalist said, you know, there is this myth about you that you were going to walk on the water. How did you come to Sydney in that year? He said, by boat. The Theosophical Society in Australia has two centers. The Springbrook Centre in Queensland, which was acquired in 1993 or 1994. It is an 11.5 acre property, and it hosts a number of gatherings throughout the year of the society and the lodges in Queensland and many other groups, Buddhist groups, Zen Buddhist groups. This is the entrance area. This is the meeting hall. The twin cabins at Springbrook. The accommodation units, 30 on the whole. Another view of the accommodation units, and it's a place full of ferns. This is a fern in itself. Not necessarily the fern in the Mahatma letters. And this is another resident of Springbrook, a peacock. Linda and I were told by the caretaker, Barry Hoare, that this peacock spends literally hours in front of the glass door of the meeting hall looking at himself. So this may have some implication for males down the line of evolution. Another center in Australia, this is in country New South Wales, south of Sydney, is Canyon Lee. It was donated by a very devoted member of the society, Mr. Bill Bolito, who has passed away, 800 acres of land. This is the Bolito House. The meetings of the National Council of the TS in Australia take place here. Another view of Bolito House. A view from the veranda. Another view of the Bolito House. And this gives you an idea of the kind of environment that surrounds the house. We see a lot of kangaroos there, wallabies, and smaller wallabies which are called paddy melons, and also emus and other wildlife. Well, we have visited a number of countries. Now perhaps we should go forward towards the end of this presentation to Adyar. The Blavatsky Bungalow, where the School of the Wisdom meets, it was renovated 2 years ago. It's a colonial bungalow. The Adyar Library and Research Center. This is a view of the reading room of the Adyar Library. You will see theosophical magazines here, and this is the theosophical magazine of the TS in Slovenia, and let me see if I can see anything else. I think this is the magazine of the TS in Hungary. Is Thomas here? No, I shouldn't ask anymore. Anyhow, there are magazines not only of National Society, but from different institutions, academic institutions, Indological institutions. It's a very nice place to stay for a good read. The Buddhist shrine at Adyar. The Colonel Olcott's memorial near the river, exactly on the spot where his body was cremated. The Founders Avenue, which gives an idea of the spaciousness of Adyar. Headquarters Hall, fully renovated in October 2009. The headquarters building. This is the entrance to Annie Besant's room. This is the chowki on which she would sit and work. It's a chowki and a desk. So that was her workstation, so to speak. This is the famous roof of Adyar, and Colonel Olcott mentions that some of the adepts walked through this roof. One of them walked through this roof, through that door, because he needed to visit HPB, who used to live in this room here, which is the president's office. And if you can see, the president is at work at her desk here. This photo was taken just before we left Adyar. And here, Annie Besant, that's her room, and she installed this plaque outside her room saying, "Work for Adyar, the master's home." It was difficult to choose a slide to end this presentation, There were too many choices, so I opted for a choiceless one. This monument was erected during Dr. George Arundale's presidency, and it is the TS monument to the unknown member, unknown members. And the inscription on this monument speaks for itself, and in more ways than one. Who can assure the future of the TS, the integrity of the TS, the unity of the TS, the stability of the society? Only a few individuals, the president. The society has had very capable leaders throughout its history, but the members are very, very important in this task. And this is what this monument says. To those unknown members of the Theosophical Society throughout the world, whose silent loyalty and sacrifice ensures to it the Master's constant blessing. Thank you.